about yourself, maybe 5 fun facts about you.
Oh, 5? I did not think of 5.
Okay, maybe 1.
All right, let's try. I once had 3 tonsils. Starting with the fun facts, I went to 5 Burning Mans. I don't think I.
This is a good beginning from venture
Yeah,
capitalists.
yeah. Now it is, but I went to the Burning Mans way before they were cool. I went to Burning Man in 2006, and that was before the plight of the tech bros. So it was very useless from networking perspective, but it was still pretty fun. My last Burning Man was in 2014, and it was, I guess, very relevant for my position, but it was also a lot less fun by then. So yeah. More fun facts. I was the youngest graduate of my graduate program at MIT, ever.
I know about this fun fact. I read about this. How that happened? You were the youngest who finished MBA and
The dual degree program, right?
Yes.
The MBA and the master's in
So
computers.
how that? Tell us how that happened.
Yeah, no problem. So maybe I'll start a little bit with my background.
Yeah, let's start from your background.
So I started my professional career as part of a program called Talpiot in the Army, and it's one of the most elite programs in Israel. And the way it works is once you get selected there, you start your bachelor degree first, and only then you serve in the Army. And if you stay through the whole program, it's a total of 9 years in the Army. So I was selected there, and I was also I was very young to graduate high school, so I also was very young to start the Talpiot program. So I was 17, and when you're 17, 9 years feels like your entire life. So after 2 years in the program, I decided I want to leave, and I went on and I served the rest of my military time at 8200, whereas
It's an elite.
yeah, it's the one of the largest intelligence units in the Israeli army. And what I was doing there is I was a part of the research and development arm, and I'm trying to find a nice way of saying we were breaking things. So we're doing a lot of research and development for new intelligence gathering tools. So if you think of a new piece of technology, my role was to see whether you could grab a signal or grab information from whatever that new piece of technology from a distance, one way or another. So it was a very technological service. We're doing a lot of R&D, essentially. So I basically I did my undergrad and my Army service sort of at the same time, and then I left to join Agilent Technology. So coming back to your original question of how I end up being the youngest graduate, so this program has the very strict demand of having at least 5 years of working experience post your undergrad studies. So if you finish early, you maybe finish at 21, and then you need to work for 5 years. So I guess the youngest people to join were 26. And I was just under 23 when I was applying. And I really wanted to join this program. And they say 5 years. And I'm just like, okay, so I did my undergrad while serving in the Army. Army is a position, right? So that's 3 years. And then I was, or maybe 2.5, and then I was working for 2 years post-Army. So I guess that's 2 years. So I'm just going to apply. Mm-hmm. And I guess they bought it, and I got, and I joined the program when I was 23, where I guess the youngest person after me was, 26. So yeah.
So tell us about background, what happened after you graduated, and
Sure, we'll complete the life story part.
And before you started Meron Capital.
Of course. So I think up until up until my graduate studies, I was a techie. So I was doing research and development, I was writing code, and I also did this dual degree program. I was more excited about the master's in computer science than I was about the MBA. But once I studied both subjects, I found myself a lot more drawn into the business part. And after I graduated, I did what every MBA graduate does when he graduates and still doesn't know what he wants to do when he grows older, and I went to management consulting because it's kind of like another 2 years of business school. It's a good way of postponing the decision, not really committing. You have to like taste a bunch of different industries, and I really thought that was gonna help me finally figure out what I want to do when I grow up. So 2 years in, I was working at Bain & Company, and instead of focusing on one industry, I was actually doing one after the other pre-deal due diligence. I was working more than on any given project. I was working on what they call PEG, the private equity group, and instead of consulting to media, pharma, tech companies, I was basically consulting large acquirers and private equity firms on whether to buy or not to buy certain companies. And I had, in every project, a project was a month, and every project was something else. So I was thinking that I was going to specialize, and I basically specialized in not specializing. That turned me on to the whole world of private equity, and that's sort of how I learned more about transactions and acquisitions. And I later left I left Bain to join PwC to join a group that does exactly that. So we're doing pre-deal due diligence, but also post-merger integration. And it was very interesting. But by that point, I was 6 years in the United States, and I was facing a decision. Do I want to stay in the US, or do I want to move back to Israel? And then I made two decisions. One is I want to move back to Israel. But two, I want to move to the buy side, because there's something really frustrating about being the consultant. My deliverable was presentations. I didn't even know if my recommendations were taken, if I was bringing value, if I was just like making presentations. So I really wanted to move to the buy side. I left the US and I was looking for a job in Israel. And at first I was looking for private equity. The industry of private equity does not exist in Israel for the simple reason that anytime, or most times, where a company buys an Israeli company, it's usually a US company that buys it. There's a few local internal Israeli acquisitions, but there's not a lot of room in those acquisitions for junior team members. So as I was looking for a job in Israel, I started noticing the venture capital industry, which was that, but much smaller. So instead of looking into acquiring large companies, you were investing in smaller companies. And I found this industry to be a lot, even more interesting than I did the private equity work. It was a lot more personable. You had to use your instincts. You had to read the person in front of you.
You have to be an optimist.
Yeah, you have to be an optimist. You have to use your imagination. Do you see this happening? And you get to work with very exciting people. So when I moved to Israel, my first job back in Israel was Meron Capital. And I was working there for 2 years, but this is also when I met my partner, Daniel Roditi. We were very junior at the time. He was just graduating business school, and we were kind of teaching each other the work of venture capital. But after 2 years at Bloomberg, we both had the opportunity to work with a large investor and build our own fund. So basically, this large investor was interested in deploying a lot of money in Israel and needed someone to build a strategy and formulate his investments into a fund. And Danny and I left Bloomberg in order to lead this. And this fund is what ended up being Meron Capital Fund 1. So we invested $30 million into 16 companies. And out of those 16 companies, 6 had exits, 2 reached unicorn stage, and the other active 5 are also growing. So we have a very interesting portfolio, as well as we produce a lot of liquidity for our investors. In 20, I guess another interesting thing, this investor, the single LP, was from the Emirates. And this entire thing happened in 2017. So the Abraham Accords happened in 2020, as you know. So we built our entire Fund 1 portfolio having to be fairly quiet about the source of the funds. We could disclose it to founders that are working with us, but we couldn't talk about this publicly. By the way, not because of Israel. Israel was very happy to collaborate with businessmen from the Emirates. It was because the public opinion in the Emirates back then was not quite there.
Which year was it?
2017, or even very late 2016 when we just started. So in 2020, 2 things happened. One of them is the Abraham Accords, of course, but the other 2 were our first 2 exits. So suddenly we have DPI, we have really good results, and we can finally say who our investor was. So we went out very big with PR, but also with fundraising, and then we raised what later became Meron Capital 2, which was also a multi-LP fund. So we have, I guess, about 35 different investors in Fund 2, which was extremely hard because building the Rolodex is the hardest part in raising funds. So yeah, it was a very long process. We went without a salary for the longest time because we were trying to build ourselves. But by early 2022, we did the final closing of $55 million of Fund 2. Fund 2, we have 14 portfolio companies to date. We have 1 exit and 1 unicorn in that portfolio, and we're about to finish investing out of Fund 2. We have just 1, maybe 2 more investments. And now we're in the process of raising Fund 3, and honestly, once you have those investors that work with you and know you, this fundraising, so this fundraising process, you're not spitting blood over it anymore. It's much easier, and it's all about relationships. Yeah, so that's, in short, that's how we started Meron.
Yeah, thank you. So you describe founding Meron Capital as fulfilling your lifelong dream of being an entrepreneur. What the personal experience most shaped the funding philosophy?
Yeah, so, and this comes back to this whole idea of I was sort of waiting for this, figuring out what I want to do in my life. And I think from a very early age, I knew that I was going to found my own company. It's something that I was always intrigued about. It's something I always wanted to do. But being such a generalist, like this fear of commitment, if you will, got me to not specialize in any one industry. But I was also so infatuated by startups, by this whole process, by VCs. So to me, I kind of feel like it's a full circle to coming back to a place where the business that I founded is a venture capital. So we see ourselves as VCs because that's what we are, but we're also entrepreneurs. And this is something that, yes, it comes in my investment philosophy, but also in how we engage with startups. There's a lot of startups that want to take money from founders, from VCs that used to be founders. And that makes a lot of sense. With us, you're taking money from VCs that are founders. We are struggling to build our business at the same time. Like right now, we're building our brand, we're building our strategy, we're building our vision, and we're dealing with this every day.
How does Meron Capital's DNA rooted in Israeli innovation? And what's the difference from of US and European funds?
European, oh wow. The Israeli ecosystem is very exciting. The things that I was working on when I was, I guess, not even 19 in the Israeli intelligence force are more complex and more cutting edge than anything I've done in my professional career later on. So this whole idea of we're going to take an 18-year-old and we're going to teach him how to code, and then we're going to let him use this technical tool that he just learned to freaking save his country. And then they're going to obtain intelligence, and they're going to prevent a suicide bombing by this. It's think how crazy that is for Israelis to be brought up that way. And it's not just the being the smartest person in the room, like, of course, but it's also this can-do attitude. This thing that I just learned how to do in this intense 10-week class saved lives. So where students in their first quarter life, like until they're 25, do things that are just very theoretical, Israelis get this like keys to the castle or like this feeling of you could make a huge difference very early on. And this approach and this feeling is what makes Israelis such great startup founders. And you really see that when you're looking at Israeli startups.
I have this question. It's not here. How has the invest climate in Israel changed last 3 years? I know everyone asking you.
Ask me how it changed the last 3 days. That's more interesting.
For someone who doesn't live in Israel.
Yeah. I think it's what I just said, but triple. In the sense of, so now you have to do it. Like, you have to be the best. You have to, because there's this emergency. But also, if you're in the military, if you're working, if you're a startup founder, you need to work day by day in this intense feeling and in this intense state of uncertainty. So you just have to be flexible. You have to never assume anything. And tomorrow, half your employees are gone because they're recruited to the reserve forces, and the next day your client stops answering your emails because you're Israeli and they don't want to deal with Israelis, and you just need to roll with the punches. And I think it brought us, or it's brought Israeli entrepreneurs sort of back to its roots of being a founder is really hard, and once it got so popularized, there's this feeling of phase one, build a company, phase two, make money, like it's obvious or like it's too easy, and you know how good times breed weak people breed bad times. So there's, for too long, it was a bit too easy to become a founder, honestly, everywhere. Mm-hmm. If you look at the post-COVID and the low interest rate times, and it brought this sort of wave of founders that were approaching this a little bit too casually. And when you compare the startups that were founded in 2020, 2021, to the startups founded in the last 2 years, specifically in Israel, it's just so much more exciting to invest in those startups. And talking again about the last 3 days, you walk down the street in Israel, and it's almost like you were carrying a backpack this whole time, and someone just like took it off. You see it in the air. It's almost like I'd look at the street and feel like someone cleaned it, or it just feels clearer. And I think this trial by fire we all went through over the last 2 years, plus the fact that now we can refocus on doing business and on building companies, is just going to do amazing things for Israel.
Yeah, let's hope the peace will last.
Agreed.
I want to ask you a specific question. Meron Capital focuses on innovative software technologies. What specific domains, AI, cyber security, dev tools, or vertical SaaS, are you the most excited about today?
It's a great question, and it changes with the times a lot. What's going on right now in Israel is that everything is almost like collapsing into mostly to cyber. There's so many new companies being built around cyber, and it's an amazing industry. We have 4.5 amazing companies in cybersecurity domains, and they're all driving our portfolio returns way up. However, cybersecurity is not a giant industry. There's so much more, and it makes sense. A lot of what you study in the Israeli military, a lot of the special skills you have, are very well ported to cybersecurity domains. But there's so many huge markets where deep technology could be applied to and could make a huge impact. For example, what about digital health? How come every young person in Israel, you ask him what's a CISO, he won't only be able to tell you what a CISO is, but also how they purchase software, what their priorities, and what new domains they're excited about. If you ask a young founder in Israel, how does a hospital procurement manager make their decision? What is a hospital procurement manager? What kind of needs do pharma companies have? They're not going to know. And it's a shame, because from a technological perspective, we have all the ability in the world to bring huge solutions into that domain. And this domain is probably 10, 20 times bigger than the entire cybersecurity market. So what I really want to see is more founders building solutions into pharma and healthcare.
Tell us about AI. Everyone interested in AI. How about AI? We had like 15 talks in Salon just about AI.
It's a bit of a pet peeve. It's like, no one's ever going to say we're an AWS EC2 company, or like no one's going to say we're a Python. If you're using a certain technology to do something, it doesn't make you that technology. If you're using Python to write your code, you're not a Python company. However, if you're using AI to do something in real estate, you're a real estate tech company. You're not an AI company. And it's kind of became this cop-out where companies could avoid saying who they benefit or what they do or who needs this product and why, simply by stating the type of technology they use to do it. So I really try not to treat AI or like applicable AI as a domain of itself, but more try like uncover the underlying domains. And of course, any company that's not using AI to do what they're doing is just being stupid, because it's for most problems, it's the best solution, and it's become so easy to do. But just don't get confused in thinking you're an AI company if the solution you're tackling just happens to need AI to solve.
Yeah, that's a common.
Yeah.
You've had such a remarkable outcomes already, 7 acquisition-free unicorns from just 30 portfolio companies. I think everyone wants to know what patterns beyond luck do you think explain this hit rate?
Yeah, it's very important to be lucky, and it's even more important to get lucky early on. but I'm not sure how that's a helpful tip.
Maybe now.
Yeah. I think
What helps?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest indicators for success we've found in founders is resiliency. And resiliency is tricky because how do you really track that? And we went into a lot of conversations. Sometimes we try to uncover whether the founder had a major crisis in his life and how they managed it. Most times we try to do back channel references and find people that worked for an intense for an extensive period with that founder. Sometimes we just push them in the conversation. What if he said something we disagree on? How do they respond to it? Do they find new information? Do they get flustered by the fact that the meeting's not going as well as they expected? And we try to do our best to tell you that we always know how resilient a founder is. No, but a lot of times, and this is our luck with the Israeli ecosystem, a lot of times we're able to get very deep and very intense information about the founder just simply because Israel's not that big a place. We're 2 hops away from practically any founder.
So Israel has often been called the startup nation. What aspects of its ecosystem still surprise global investors?
It's a good question. Still surprise. I think to some extent this over-reliance on cyber that I've mentioned. I think the way, how do I phrase this best? The impact that the Army has on founder success, even years after. Most founders start their company at 27, 28. That's 7 to 10 years after, or 10 years after they start, 7 years after they finish. Some of them start their companies even at 40. And still, this indicator of the people you worked in the Army, and I think just because how intense and how extreme this experience is, still says a lot about you. It's also very hard for investors coming not from Israel to kind of understand, oh, this unit, but this unit has a lot of subunits, and where within this unit, it's really hard to differentiate. Kind of from the outside, everything sounds the same. The same exact unit could be someone that did something that indicates that he's a tech leader, and someone that was just there because he happened to be fluent in Arabic coming out of high school. And it's really hard to differentiate.
I want to ask you 2 more personal questions, and then we started later. We will give opportunity to ask audience questions. So you've said you aim to be a founder's most valuable partner. What does that actually look like on a difficult day?
Okay. Wow. I think a lot of the times it's also knowing when to plug in, but also when to not. So on a very difficult day, for example, a founder would be making something that I would think is a ginormous mistake, and I would argue with him, make sure he heard my point, and then trust him. And I think this is something that not enough investors know how to do. It's not that clear cut. Sometimes you need to push harder, sometimes you need to insist. But in a lot of ways, in a lot of situations, you just need to accept that the founder goes to bed and wakes up with his company, and I go to bed and wake up with Meron Capital, my company, which isn't the founder's company. And he has a perspective that I don't. So a lot of the times it's sort of knowing when to let go.
What's the one example of advice or strategic intervention that materially change a company's trajectory?
Wow.
Sorry, I'm asking a difficult question.
Yeah, no, there's a lot. There's
It's difficult to give just one.
yeah, no, and also some of them are too recent for me to share, but I think there was one time where a founder was going through a very strategic deal, and most of, I don't think I gave any strategic advice, but simply being the person that has enough context so he can talk about this, but also supporting and having his back. And I feel like it really stopped that founder from getting into a lot more emotional distress. Because those situations, like every time you raise a round, every time you face a shutdown, every time, and I'm saying every time because it happens a lot in the life of the company, every time you have an exit opportunity on the table, you sometimes don't sleep for a week. I once, I got a call from someone who we both knew the same founder, and he's like, yeah, I don't think he slept for a week. Could you talk to him? So a lot of times, and your family doesn't have enough context so you can talk to them about this, and your co-founder is having their own problems, so you can try to talk to them, but they're too close. So sometimes it's just trying to be supportive and trying to be there for the founder. Also, a lot of times it's about identifying trade-offs. Think about a situation where a client much bigger than any of the clients you had before wants to sign $1 million deal with you. But for you to get that deal, you just need to develop this and this and this and this. These are one of few situations where us as investors have better context than the founders, because they're only thinking of the $1 million in revenue. We're thinking, wait, you're going to have to support this. This is going to be a force fit for you. You might overfit the company to that direction, and your product's not going to be scalable anymore. And the reason why we know this and they don't is because we've seen this happen in a lot of shapes and forms in many industries. So we kind of understand the pattern where the founder mostly sees his situation.
I have a friend, Carrie. She told me if you want to stop sleeping, you can become a founder.
Oh, for sure.
I want to ask you last question. It's a good question. So, as a woman leading a top-tier Israeli VC fund, what changes have you seen in the gender representation and inclusion among both founders and investors?
Wow. When I founded Meron Capital, I was one of 2 founding partners of funds in Israel. Now I could easily think of 7. There's probably more, but these are the ones I'm in good contact with. So for sure, women representation has increased in that. I also think I think we're getting to a healthier and healthier place with this, because it has a compounding effect of you just see someone doing this and it looks normal to you, so it's more likely and more easy to for you to go there. And yeah, I think it's a really strong trend. I feel like I already know who the next junior partners who are going to start their own fund. I think a lot more analysts and principals have a better chance of being promoted. When I joined this industry, to be fair, the reason why I jumped to start Meron Capital is because I knew that no one's ever going to promote me to partner. Like the standard was you start as an analyst, and the best you can hope to make is a principal. You never make partner. 1 out of 30 people make partner, and they usually don't. And even if you do, you're a junior partner. And I think the upward mobility in the industry in general improved. And I think it has probably impacted women who are newer much more.
Thank you, Liron. Let's go to the questions. Yes, Jim. We don't need the microphone, thank you.
We've learned in the last 20, 30 years is the fact that many of the new technologies can either be used for good or evil. And even ones that are used for good have unintentionally negative consequences. Of all the things that you see on the horizon right now in the deep tech world and the tech world, what are the ones that are both simultaneously exciting and also keep you up at night?
Oh, I guess you want me to say AI, right? Yeah, I think I can't answer this question without saying AI. I was trying to, but yeah. No, but I think in general, a lot of tools that are meant to keep people engaged have, and you know, this means everything from advertising. We've even seen pharma or a digital health company that was meant to help patients with compliance, but then we're asking them, oh, what type of drugs do you focus on? And then it's pain medication. And then you're like, okay, is this company doing good or is it supporting addiction? So I think there's just a lot of effort in general, more than in other places around EdTech, to keep people in social media, to keep people engaged. And this was always scary. You know, like the Facebook algorithm, this was always something that was impacting especially the newer, younger generation. But now there's this ability to generate pseudo-organic content at mass. You could create like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, posts, videos, everything in the millions in seconds. And that, plus an optimization algorithm that means to keep you engaged, I think is very scary.
As a follow-up to that, going back to your...
Jim, you already been speaker here.
To be more
Yeah,
specific,
let's ask other people. You can ask Liron privately.
I will ask you.
Yes, Arbana.
Yes. Hi.
I'm journalist.
Sorry.
More political question. So in the last 3 years, because of the war, anti-Semitism has increased for 1,000%. How much is this affecting the ecosystem of the Israeli entrepreneurs in the tech ecosystem?
It is. We've had an investor that we've had a long process with that shortly after October 7th just stopped answering our emails. We've had an existing investor that they had to say that their policy to Israeli investments have changed and they can't reinvest in the fund. We've had, honestly, we haven't had a lot of these, but anecdotally, we've seen this. We do see Israeli companies struggling more to have business, mostly with the enterprises and with the partners that weren't very entrenched in the Israeli ecosystem, mostly with the ones that usually don't necessarily engage with Israeli companies. But you see it, and it's one more hurdle that you need to overcome. And I guess we really hope that things would go back to normal. And back to your question, Jim, I think that this, like social media and sort of the ability to influence public opinion doesn't help that. And there's a lot of efforts, not just to keep people engaged, but also to move people towards a certain opinion that makes a big impact there. I'm just hoping this trend will reverse now.
Thank you, Arbana.
So based on the IDF unit that you were in, and any cyber related or adjacent unit in the IDF, does Meron Capital have a way to kind of filter through or kind of poach people that they're seeing in the cybersecurity? They're like, wow, this person's talented. We think they're going to be a founder.
Well,
You have, like,
yes,
connections?
for sure, yes. We do prefer usually to invest in founders after they've had at least one post-army role, because everything I just said about this can-do attitude and feeling like the world's in your palm is amazing, but the best founders know to balance the young, optimistic approach with a little bit of more pragmatism, and I feel like this first role after So yes, 100% we have the inside track there, but it's just more tricky than that because you need to catch them a few years after.
More questions? Guys, if there... Lila.
How do you manage building trust with your investors and making them feel comfortable while you make sure that they still listen to you and take you seriously?
Liron, this is the future founder.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. Back to your question, being a female and having started in this industry fairly young. So we found Meron Capital before I was, or right after I was 30 actually. So it is something that makes it harder, but I don't think those two things are at odds with each other. I think you could be 100% nice and open and transparent and still stay firm. And I think it's just like to me and also to our to the three partners that make up Meron, it's just very authentic. So it's also easy for us to be that way, and maybe it's because we're operating out of strong conviction. You know, maybe conviction is the solution here. Like when you feel like you know your strategy, when you feel like you're following something, it's just very easy to stay open and approachable and nice without appearing like you're not directed and strategic.
What advice you could give to younger self just starting out in venture capital?
Wow, that's easy. The best way to be a great investor is to learn from great investors. And I think the one thing that I personally feel like I'm missing in my resume is that I didn't spend enough time working with and under some of the best investors. So maybe if I could do this all over again, I would just find the best or the investor I appreciate the most in the industry, and I would shadow him or her for a year before starting Meron Capital. I think we've been working very hard in identifying and maintaining mentors for ourselves to kind of make up for this gap. And if I had to do this all over again, I would have first sort of directly learned under some of Israel's top investors.
I know Jim has a question. Yes, Michael.
So, just can you give me just a feel on the launches over, say, for the last 3 years and before that, and being an investor here in the U.S. is the deal flow is astronomical. I mean, the number of people starting companies, good, bad, or ugly, is amazing.
Yeah.
Have you seen that slow with the war, or is there kind of a pent up now that maybe
Yeah.
there's more deal flow and more companies? Because I just being with IBM, we love the technology.
Yeah, and you buy some of them. Yes.
Yes, we did. Bought some of them.
Yeah. It's a really interesting question, and also we've been tracking that, like year over year, new startups. The hard data is that the number of new companies starting has been more or less constant. Like maybe some startups shifted from 2023 to 2024, but there's no overarching trend. There's no big dip. There's no. It's always 500-ish a year. You do see, kind of like I mentioned, a bit of a difference in quality, where I feel like the startups you do see start in the hardest of times just tend to be more like fierce. But yeah, like for some reason the company initiation hasn't changed materially.
Well, that's very encouraging.
Yeah.
Because my hypothesis would have been it would have dipped. So.
The war created sort of this counter effect where a lot of large US investors, Sequoia, opened their office in Israel in 2024, like right after the war. So whatever we lost in people defocusing and this fresh injection of capital got them sort of made up.
Thank you, Michael. More questions? Krishna. I was about to ask if I want to be founder.
Yeah, similar to being a good investor, I think being a good founder is also something that there's no school for. And so I'd probably give you the same advice that I gave myself. Find the best founder you know and work for them in whatever job you can, like be their chief of staff. I think sort of like experiencing high growth startup and experiencing how top founders do it is probably the best way to learn.
Beautiful. If there is no questions, Liron, thank you for this conversation.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.